A year ago today, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz took office promising to kickstart Germany's economy and vowing to revive the political center. But on Merz's one-year anniversary, his coalition is beset by infighting and languishing in the polls. His own popularity ratings have taken a nosedive. And the far-right AfD party has risen to the top of the polls. Here's a look at Merz's first year in office.
1 year ago, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz promised the world.
Germany is back on track.
That's one big claim for an incoming chancellor, especially given the challenges he faced: an ailing economy, a rising far right, and a disintegrating world order.
The man who once left politics to work for private equity instantly defined the economy as the measuring stick of his success.
Germany's security, its ability to shape the world, directly depends on our economic strength.
Mit unserer wirtschaftlichen Stärke.
From day one, Merz made clear that he would continue to use that strength to defend Ukraine against Russia. Since then, Germany has replaced the United States as its largest supporter.
Now, the overwhelming majority of Germans back the support for Ukraine. But what Germans elected Friedrich Merz for just over a year ago is 3 election promises: to get migration under control, to fix the ailing economy, and to tackle what previous governments only ever really talked about: fundamental reform of Germany's social, health, and pension services.
Merz also tied the survival of Germany's existing welfare system to the country's economic success.
If Germany's economy grows again, we can also secure our welfare state.
The problem is, it didn't.
Merz's election initially delivered a slight boost in economic expectations. Forecasts have had to be revised downwards ever since, and performance has been consistently hovering way below the EU average of 1.5%. That was way before the Iran crisis. The opposition Greens, who had rescued Merz from financial paralysis by enabling the new government to take on some €1 trillion in extra debt, are not amused.
This is one of the best financially equipped governments on record. One would have thought they know what to do.
Nor are voters happy. Within a year, Merz has become the least popular German chancellor on record, with an approval rating of a mere 21%. Compare government satisfaction with the predecessors, and you can see Merz's coalition was less popular than the Merkel and Scholz cabinets from the get-go, and sank even lower after 1 year. In April, another polling blow. The far-right AfD overtook the Chancellor's Conservative bloc for the first time. Merz had once promised to halve their support. He had successfully reduced migration, toning down a debate fueling the far-right surge. But the stalled reforms and 2 successive regional election defeats for the centre-left SPD had deeply wounded his coalition partner. Talks in April became tense, with Merz reportedly shouting at his SPD Vice-Chancellor Lars Klingbeil. The far-right AfD was fast to zoom in on the intensified coalition infighting.
He's now going to have a serious word with the SPD. This shows just how finished his government is after a year.
In contrast, on the world stage, Merz was an instant success. He crucially managed to form a connection with US President Donald Trump.
It's an honor to have you. And I can tell you we've been on the phone many times talking about some of the problems of the world outside of Germany.
When Trump launched a full attack on Iran, Merz initially remained staunchly at his side. Even after he posted about erasing a civilization, Merz played the threat down as a
rhetorical part of his strategy toward Iran.
But more than 2 months into the war, with no end in sight and huge costs to Europe's economies, Merz lost his patience, saying he was disillusioned with Trump.
An entire nation is being humiliated, and the Americans clearly don't have a strategy.
Trump responded with anger after blasting Merz as not knowing what he is talking about. The US president initially announced the withdrawal of 5,000 of some 35,000 US troops stationed in Germany, to then double down on this announcement.
We're going to cut way down, and we're cutting a lot further than 5,000.
Trump also announced an economic blow to Europe that will mostly affect German automakers.
We've increased the tariffs on all cars coming into the United States by 25%.
and trucks.
On German national TV, Merz rejected any link to his comments.
Not everything we've been hearing over the past few days is new. It may be a bit exaggerated, but it's not new. I'm not giving up on working to improve transatlantic relations, and I'm not giving up on cooperating with Donald Trump.
If this tension continues to escalate even further, it will endanger what is left of the transatlantic bond. To this day, the very foundation of European security.
Human rights organizations are disappointed with Merz's government.
This government's foreign policy is putting economic and security interests above the protection of human rights.
Yet at the height of the Gaza crisis, Merz became the first German chancellor to publicly halt weapons deliveries to Israel and remind Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of his humanitarian obligations on open stage.
As a democratic country ruled by law, Israel's military action must meet the standards of international humanitarian law.
A few weeks later, Merz himself declared the rules-based international order suspended for now. Germany's first conservative chancellor since Angela Merkel has faced breathtaking challenges on the world stage. His frantic foreign diplomacy saw him help big EU trade deals with India and Latin America's Mercosur states across the finishing line. Yet his failure to implement quick reforms and meet his self-declared target of turning around the German economy could soon have wider consequences for the European Union.
Madam President, how important is the success of the reform agenda in Germany for the European Union as a whole?
Of course, the economic strength of Germany is paramount in the European Union, is of critical importance.
1 year into Friedrich Merz's 4-year term as German Chancellor, Germany and Europe face unprecedented uncertainty over Ukraine and Iran.
Merz himself displayed some self-criticism as he approached the 1-year mark.
We're still behind the curve, where we need to get ahead of things. We need to make sure to push these reforms through fast.
The coming weeks and months will show whether Friedrich Merz's coalition can deliver the historic reform they promised. Neither Friedrich Merz nor Germany and Europe can afford this government to fail, or else they lose their ability to shape a shifting world order.
And that was my colleague Michaela Küfner in that report. Merz and his coalition partners have frequently clashed over policy issues. Earlier, I asked DW political correspondent Simon Young why Merz can't get a handle on these disputes.
Yeah, Sarah, I think it's because that coalition is so difficult to lead. There's two sides, the Conservatives and then, on the other hand, the Social Democrats. They're coming from different places ideologically. They disagree at root about many things: how much the state should borrow, how much the government should focus on redistributing wealth from richer Germans to poorer ones. And, you know, you've got a finance minister who's a social democrat and an economy minister who's conservative. It's almost a recipe for disputes, and we've seen these squabbles in the cabinet again and again. But the German chancellor is not a president. He can't just sort of fire people from one side of his cabinet table. He's got to moderate and try and create compromise. The process of getting compromise is slow, and inevitably there are always some people on either side who are unhappy. Backbenchers are disgruntled, and we get these noises off, and even reports of the Chancellor sort of shouting at his deputy, which he denied, and so it goes on. You know, we hear these disagreements becoming a bit public, and then a few days later the cabinet ministers are lining up to give interviews and say, no, all is harmony, and we press on with the important things that we want to do.
And his performance on the international stage has also hit a rough patch, especially in the past week, hasn't it?
For sure. I mean, as we saw in the report, you know, the international context has been so difficult, not least because of one Donald Trump. And it was thought that Friedrich Merz was the European leader who really could get along with Trump. He was well received in the White House, Trump praising his ability to speak English. But then there's been this falling out more recently with Friedrich Merz making comments about the US being humiliated over the war in Iran, Trump responding with threats to pull out troops and impose new tariffs on EU automakers. So it's very difficult there. On China, Merz was said to have pulled off a pretty reasonable visit there in February. Not falling out was regarded as a success. He sort of dodged around the human rights questions, but you know, that was a cementing of that important relationship. And on the EU, Merz has pressed ahead with Germany's central role as a leading country in Europe. Merz says he wants the EU to be an important actor on the world stage and to be competitive again. He wants Germany to be a key part of that. He's been very active travelling around the EU, and you know, most people would say that Merz has pushed ahead successfully with that sort of central position of Germany as a key leading country within the EU as well.
Simon Young, thank you.